What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. If you guys see something small flying around on the screen, it's this doggone fly that I've been trying to get rid of for the last couple of minutes, but it just won't go away. So if you guys see me get sidetracked for 2 or 3 seconds, it's that doggone fly. But I got a really interesting episode for you guys. The Buffalo Bills, it seems like for the last 3 years, have been the favorites to make it out of the AFC, but for some reason, under Sean McDermott, the Buffalo Bills have yet to reach the Super Bowl. And you have to start asking yourself the question, what's holding the Buffalo Bills back? Stephon Diggs, he didn't really have an answer to that question after they lost to the Cincinnati Bengals. And I'm starting to wonder if Sean McDermott is the cause for why the Buffalo Bills can't make it to the Super Bowl. We're going to talk about that. I'm also going to tell you guys why I believe Sean Payton can fix Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, before he got traded to the Denver Broncos, he was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And in the span of 1 year, Russell Wilson went from being a top 5, top 10 QB in the league to becoming a jabroni. But I think that Sean Payton can squeeze what remaining juice Russell Wilson has left in the tank. And lastly, I want to tell you guys why you shouldn't overlook the Washington Commanders this year. Before we get into it, if this is your first time tuning in to the JT Sports Podcast, welcome. Make sure that you like the video, subscribe to the channel. Also, make sure that you check out the JT Sports Podcast, available on all podcasting platforms. Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from, you can find the JT Sports Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode of the pod, leave us with a 5-star review. Share this episode on your social media platforms with your friends, family members, and acquaintances. The Buffalo Bills, for the last 3 seasons, have been a lot of people's picks to make it out of the AFC. But for some reason, this team has yet to reach the Super Bowl under head coach Sean McDermott. In 2020, they lost in the AFC Championship games to the Kansas City Chiefs. The year after that, they lost in the overtime to Kansas City, which many people part of Bills Mafia believe that if Buffalo got the ball to start overtime, that they would have won that game. And then this past season, they lost to the Cincinnati Bengals 27-10 in the divisional round at home. And after that loss, Stephon Diggs was asked, what's holding the Buffalo Bills back from making it to the Super Bowl? And Stephon Diggs, he was frustrated. He didn't really have an answer. None of the Buffalo Bills players really have an answer to why they can't make it to the Super Bowl. And if the Buffalo Bills don't make it to the AFC Conference Championship game this season, I think you got to start asking some really tough questions. And one of those tough questions has to be, is Sean McDermott holding back the Buffalo Bills from making it to the Super Bowl? And that may sound a little bit outlandish to say, because Sean McDermott has done a fantastic job at building up this Buffalo Bills franchise. But at this point, the Buffalo Bills, they bring in one of the most talented rosters in the NFL every single season. You have Josh Allen, who is one of the best quarterbacks in the game. The Bills have everything necessary to win the Super Bowl, but yet they have yet to even appear in one. And then you got franchises like the Cincinnati Bengals coming out of nowhere and making it to the Super Bowl. Like, who would have thought that in year 2, Joe Burrow would be able to take the Cincinnati Bengals to the damn Super Bowl behind one of the worst offensive lines in the history of the NFL? So you look at the Buffalo Bills and you look at Sean McDermott, in big games, it looks like he kind of comes up small. And I think that Sean McDermott is like the Kirk Cousins of head coaches. That may sound a little bit tough to hear if you're a Bills fan, but let's just be honest. This guy is supposed to be a defensive-minded coach, but yet the 2 times you played Kansas City in the postseason, You weren't able to slow them down. And you can't make the argument and say, well, if we would have got the ball to start overtime, JT, we would have won that game. Yeah, you probably would. But guess what? Your defense was on the field, and your defense couldn't get it done. Sean McDermott is a defensive-minded coach. Is he or is he not? So therefore, if your defense is on the field, they should be able to go ahead and get a stop. The Cincinnati Bengals have been able to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. They've been able to slow down the Chiefs' offense. Lou Anarumo has done a fantastic job as a defensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals. And every time the Chiefs go up against Lou Anarumo's defense, they have a tough time. But for some reason, Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier, they just can't crack the code against Andy Reid and Mahomes. And when you also look at their struggles on the offensive side of the football, it seems like they tend to get too dependent on Josh Allen. Now, Josh Allen is a fantastic quarterback, but the dude gets asked to do way too much for the Buffalo Bills. I mean, this dude was throwing the ball 42 times in their loss against the Cincinnati Bengals. Do you know how many rushing yards the Buffalo Bills had against Cincinnati? 64. Do you know how many the Cincinnati Bengals had? 172. When you get to the postseason, you have to be able to be balanced. You don't have to be the best rushing team in the NFL, but you got to be able to run the football when necessary for two reasons. First of all, because you have to be able to keep the defense guessing. You don't want to get too one-dimensional. And secondly, running the football is really important when it comes to sealing games away. If you can't run the football, how are you ever going to be able to keep a lead? How are you going to be able to chew time off the clock? And then you have Josh Allen, since he gets asked to do so much, he becomes really reckless. And it's not like the dude is a bum or anything like that. It's just like the dude just tries to do too much. You remember when they barely survived Skylar Thompson and the Miami Dolphins? It seemed like they had that game in control. And then they go up, and then Josh Allen starts getting careless with the football, and the Dolphins get back into the game. And I told people after that win that they weren't going to beat the Cincinnati Bengals. And people were calling me a hater, but it was just the truth. If you want to win the Super Bowl, you have to be able to take care of the football. You can't be reckless, especially when you get inside the red zone. And Josh Allen, his recklessness cost them against the Cincinnati Bengals to an extent. And it almost cost them against the Miami Dolphins. If they weren't facing off against a third-string quarterback in Skylar Thompson, and that was two underneath center, Buffalo would have got sent home the first round against Miami. And then this defense is always good during the regular season. But when it comes playoff time and they have to stop one of the best QBs in the league like a Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes, they can't do it. They can't do it, and I don't know why. And you can say, well, JT, we didn't have Von Miller, we didn't have this, we didn't have that. Like, enough with the damn excuses. Sean McDermott is considered to be one of the best coaches in the game. Is he or is he not? He's supposed to be a defensive-minded coach, right? So why is it that when the Buffalo Bills go head-to-head against Kansas City in the postseason, they can't slow down Patrick Mahomes? I mean, we've seen plenty of teams in the postseason find ways to shut down this Chiefs offense. The Buccaneers did it. Todd Bowles did it. Lou Anarumo did it. So why can't Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier get the job done? If the Buffalo Bills don't make it to the AFC Conference Championship game this year, I really think you got to start asking yourself, is Sean McDermott the guy to get us over that hump? Bills Mafia right now, y'all starving for a Super Bowl. The Bengals have been to a Super Bowl. The Eagles have been to a couple of Super Bowls. You guys are just as talented as those organizations. There's no reason why you guys should consistently keep on coming up short year after year in the postseason. Tony Dungy. Remember when he was the head coach for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? He was in a similar situation that Sean McDermott's in right now. The Buccaneers, they were going to the playoffs. They had talented teams, but they just couldn't find a way to get to the big game. And what did Tampa Bay do? They moved on from Tony Dungy. They traded for John Gruden, and they won a Super Bowl. If Sean McDermott can't find a way to get Buffalo to the Super Bowl either this season or next season, I think if you're the guys with the black and white suit and ties, you got to start looking at Sean McDermott and you got to start asking yourself, is he the reason why we can't make it to the Super Bowl? I mean, yes, Sean McDermott is a great head coach, but at the same time, the objective is to win championships. It doesn't matter if you go to the playoffs every single year just to lose to teams like the Chiefs and the Bengals. Josh Allen is just as good as Joe Burrow, and he's not too far off from Patrick Mahomes. When you have a quarterback this good, you shouldn't be getting ran through by Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow. There's no reason why the AFC should be running through Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes when Josh Allen is just as good as those guys. The Buffalo Bills have to find a way to be more balanced when they get to the postseason. Sean McDermott has to find a way to win games outside of overly relying on Josh Allen. Yes, your franchise quarterback is going to be asked to step up for you in big moments. But it's a little bit unfair to ask a guy to have to do everything for you. You got to give him a little bit of help. Cincinnati had 102 total rushing yards as a team. It was a complete all-around performance. It was a complimentary performance. Great passing game, great run game. The defense was doing good. Why can't the Buffalo Bills replicate that same winning formula? Their offensive line probably wasn't the greatest, but it wasn't bad. I mean, the Buffalo Bills, they keep coming up short. And every time they do, I start looking at Sean McDermott and I say, you did a fantastic job. You ended that decade-long playoff drought, making it to the postseason with Tyrod Taylor. You've made it to an AFC championship game. You have established yourself as one of the best coaches in the game, but yet you can't find the way to get to the big dance. Sean McDermott may be the reason why the Buffalo Bills can't make it to the Super Bowl. I don't know how many of you guys have seen the movie The Dark Knight, but it's one of my favorite movies of all time. And my guy Harvey Dent, he said you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And boy, Russell Wilson became the villain pretty quick up there in the Mile High City. This guy, prior to getting traded to the Denver Broncos, was one of the best quarterbacks in the game. Top 5, top 10. And in the span of 1 year, he goes from being one of the best in the game to becoming a jabroni. And I think for the Denver Broncos, trading for Sean Payton and paying him all that money was necessary. You want to know why? Because the Denver Broncos made an all-time big mistake when they gave Russell Wilson all that money. And it was going to take an all-time great head coach to fix this mistake. And even if Russell Wilson isn't able to get back to what he used to be, I still think that Sean Payton can squeeze the remaining juice that Russell Wilson has in the tank. And Russell Wilson does have a little bit of juice in the tank. Okay, like I know last season was really tough to watch, but Russell Wilson did have some flashes. Their final game against the LA Chargers, I saw him make a spectacular throw outside the pocket. Hell, that's probably his best game of the season. And you look at Sean Payton, right? His final season with the New Orleans Saints, he went 9-8. And that may not be super impressive to you. 9-8, JT. I mean, did they make it to the postseason? No, they didn't. But at the same time, though, if you go back and you look at what Sean Payton had to work with that season, him going 9-8 was kind of a testament to how good of a coach he is. This dude went 9-8 with his best receiver that year being Marquez Callaway. Do any of you guys know where Marquez Callaway is now? Well, most of you guys should because you're Broncos fans, but what did Marquez Callaway do last season for the New Orleans Saints? Absolutely nothing. And can you tell me who were Sean Payton's quarterbacks his final season in NOLA? Jameis Winston, Trevor Siemian, Taysom Hill, and Ian Book. This dude had 4 different quarterbacks and still found a way to have a winning record. Jameis Winston, before he went down with that season-ending injury that year, he had the best touchdown-to-interception ratio in the NFL. This dude outdueled Aaron Rodgers early in the season. He had the Saints at 5-1 on top of the NFC South. And then they played the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Devin White pretty much ends the Jameis Winston revenge tour. And then the Saints season kind of starts to fall apart a little bit. But then Sean Payton finds a way to carve up a little bit of magic and find a way to somewhat stay afloat in the playoff race with Trevor Siemian, Taysom Hill, and Ian Book. And even though Russell Wilson, at this point in his career, most people would say he's on his last leg, I'm pretty sure most of us would take him over Trevor Siemian, Ian Book, and Taysom Hill. Now, you might make the argument that Jameis Winston may be on the same level of Russell Wilson at this stage of Russ's career. But I still probably would like to think that Russell Wilson is a better quarterback than Jameis Winston. And you guys know that Jameis is my guy. I'm a diehard Jameis Winston fan, but we got to keep it a stack. We got to keep it a stack. So if Sean Payton was able to turn glitter to gold with Jameis Winston, Trevor Siemian, Ian Book, and Taysom Hill, I'm pretty sure he should be able to have some success with Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is not like this dude, doesn't have a good team around him. The offensive line dealt with some injuries last year. You lost Tim Patrick early into the year, but now you have a lot of guys coming back healthy. You have one of the best rosters in the NFL, in my opinion, when it comes to what you have at the skill position. You got Tim Patrick, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy. You got a really good group of running backs. Like, there is enough talent on this offense for Russell Wilson to have success. And you got to remember that Russell Wilson, his head coach was Nathaniel Hackett. He was the guy calling the plays. And anytime you have a bad coach, it just brings down the performance of the whole entire team. Good example, Trevor Lawrence rookie season with Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer had Trevor Lawrence looking like a scrub out there. They get rid of Urban. They bring in Doug Peterson, an accomplished head coach that knows what he's doing. And guess what happens? Trevor Lawrence ends up having a breakout season. Funny how that works. Coaching matters. When you have an offensive-minded head coach like Sean Payton, he can fix a little bit of some issues that you may have. When you look at Russell Wilson, I don't think Russell Wilson is to the point of no return. I just think that you look at the fact that he was already kind of a little bit on the decline when he got traded from Seattle to Denver. Then you get Nathaniel Hackett, who wasn't really a good head coach, and his system wasn't a good scheme for Russell Wilson. It just was a recipe for disaster. And I was telling a lot of you Broncos fans, and a lot of you Broncos fans still haven't apologized, but it's okay. I'm not looking for no apology. I just want a little bit of some acknowledgement. I just want a little bit of some credit for saying that last season was going to be a disaster. Because I told a lot of you guys that Nathaniel Hackett was not it. The dude was not a good OC for the Bills or the Jags, and the dude never called plays in Green Bay. But it's okay. I don't want no apology. I just want a little bit of credit in the comment section. I just want you guys to say, JT, you was right. That's all I want. But I think Sean Payton is going to be able to fix Russell Wilson. This is a really good roster that the Denver Broncos have. The only concern is Russell Wilson, and you kind of got to find a way to make it work. Because, I mean, his cap hit is way too big to cut him for at least the next 2 years. Realistically, Denver is probably going to be able to move off of Russ come 2025. But 2025 is a long way from now. They may end up drafting another quarterback or bringing in somebody else if Russell Wilson ends up stinking up the joint. But you're still going to have to pay that contract. And if I'm Russell Wilson, I don't give a damn if I'm starting or riding the bench. I ain't returning. I need all that. I need all that 200. I need all that guaranteed money. I ain't leaving no money on the table. And you guys can make it seem like Russell Wilson should be feeling bad for it. But if I'm Russell Wilson, I don't feel bad at all. I'm gonna keep collecting those checks, baby. I don't care if I'm sitting on the bench or if I'm balling out. You paid me all that money, I'm gonna get every single penny. And I'm pretty sure most of you guys would have that same mentality also. And you may be like, well, JT, Russell Wilson may need to pay some of that money back if he ends up not working out under Sean Payton. Hell no, he ain't gonna pay none of that money back. Would you? Shoot, I wouldn't. But the main point that I'm trying to make is that Sean Payton is one of the greatest offensive minds in the history of the NFL. And it's going to take an all-time great head coach to fix what looks to be right now an all-time big disaster that the Denver Broncos may have in their hands. But the weapons are there for Russell Wilson to have a bounce-back season. And if I had to give you guys a prediction for how I think Russell Wilson is going to perform statistically this season under Sean Payton, I think he'll probably have 3,500 yards passing, maybe 3,400, 24 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. I think that's a pretty solid season out of Russell Wilson considering what he did last year. And I think Sean Payton's going to put a lot of emphasis on running the football. Something that Denver had success doing at times. Not a lot, but at times they had success running the football. But at this stage of his career, you're not going to ask Russ to carry you the wins. This isn't the Russell Wilson that you know from Seattle. And he probably isn't going to return. This is a new Russell Wilson. This is a Russell Wilson that is on the decline. The Broncos gave him way too much money, and they're stuck with him. So you got to find a way to make it work. And with Sean Payton, I'm pretty sure he's going to be able to cook something up to get Russell Wilson playing at least a serviceable level. I'm happy that he told Russell Wilson to get rid of the personal QB coach that he used to bring to the facility. Also told him, hey, bro, like, why do you have your own office? That made no sense, bro. I really can't believe the Denver Broncos really gave Russell Wilson his own damn office. That's like me going to school. I go to class, and my professor has me in a completely different classroom for the rest of the other class because of privilege. And I'm just getting all the answers and all the help I need. Meanwhile, everybody else is in the classroom grinding. Meanwhile, I'm getting privileged. That's not how you build a winning culture. Like, why did anybody ever think that Nathaniel Hackett and Russell Wilson were going to work? I mean, it was pretty obvious. And once I found out they gave bro his own office, that told me everything that I needed to know. Sean Payton came and told Russell Wilson, hey, bro, I need you to move that off. I need you to pack up everything and get out the office, bro. Okay, you ain't above nobody else. And after how you played last season, you need to be with the whole rest of the team. You need to be working out with the team. You don't need to be isolated. All right? And then you get rid of that. And then you have Sean Payton who comes in. You get rid of all the ego stuff. And then you start focusing on the X's and O's. And I believe that Sean Payton is going to coach the hell out of Russell Wilson. Like, have you ever heard Sean Payton talk about football, like, really break down X's and O's? It's one of the most beautiful things to hear if you're a diehard football nerd like me. Sean Payton, he's going to have Russell Wilson cooking. All right? Now, even if Russell Wilson is playing at a serviceable level, is that going to be enough for the Denver Broncos to make it to the postseason? Now, I don't know. Now, I think that's the question for another episode. But I do think that Sean Payton can get Russell Wilson playing at a way better level than what he was in 2022. I mean, the dude last year looked like an absolute jabroni. If you haven't already, make sure that you like the video, subscribe to the channel. We upload NFL videos, college football videos daily. And remember that every single video of the podcast that's uploaded on YouTube is available in audio format on all podcasting platforms: Apple, Google, Amazon, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. You can find the JT Sports Podcast. The Washington Commanders are a team that I think are being really overlooked. Okay, now they went 8-8. Well, 8-1 last season. Okay, they tied with the New York Giants, and this was a team that I feel was a quarterback away from making it to the playoffs, just like the New York Jets. But their quarterback situation wasn't as bad as the Jets, but I mean, it still wasn't great. You traded for Carson Wentz. That ain't work. You benched him really early. And then you start Taylor Heineke. And then Heineke, he comes out and he kind of gets your season turned around. You go 5-1 at one point until you end up tying with the New York Giants. And then after that tie with the Giants, the season just came off the rails from there. You lost 3 out of your last 4 games. Taylor Heineke got benched when he really never should have gotten benched and replaced to Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz got one more opportunity, and of course, he didn't make the most of it. He ended up crapping the bed. And then you start Sam Howell against the Dallas Cowboys, and the season ends on a pretty high note. Sam Howell looked pretty solid in his first NFL start. You beat Dallas 26-6. And even though you didn't make it to the postseason, I know it always feels good to beat the Dallas Cowboys. So this offseason, okay, you fire Scott Turner and you replace him with offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy, who many people feel should be a head coach right now. Now, we don't really know what's going to transpire when it comes to Eric Bieniemy being an NFL head coach. Some people believe with the Washington Commanders potentially being sold that the new ownership could possibly come in and make Eric Bieniemy the next head coach if Ron Rivera doesn't work out, or if Ron Rivera just decides to retire. But I definitely believe that this offense is going to be way better this season than what it was under Scott Turner. Now, the offensive line, hopefully it should be better. They gave up 48 sacks last year. They did a little bit of improvement to it, not a lot. I mean, we still have to pray for the left side of that offensive line, but I do like right guard Sam Cosmi, who was their best offensive lineman last year. They got a center out of Arkansas who didn't give up a single sack last season. So hopefully this offensive line should improve. But outside of the offensive line, I mean, this is a really talented offense. You got Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, Scary Terry at wide receiver. You got Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson, Chris Rodriguez, rookie running back out of Kentucky, who I like a lot. You got a really good group of running backs. You got Sam Howell at QB, who the jury is still out on, but he did show a lot of promise in that win over the Dallas Cowboys. And let's not forget that prior to his final season at North Carolina, he got a lot of hype going into his final season. This was somebody who, going in, was supposed to be the first or second quarterback taken off the board when he decided to declare for the draft. But his final season at North Carolina didn't really go all that great. Wasn't really because of him. It was just that the team around him just was in a little bit of a retool. They lost a lot of players to the NFL draft. So his final season at UNC kind of lowered this draft stock a little bit. But this is somebody who is still insanely talented. He's a pretty good athlete, has a really good arm. And if Eric Bieniemy is as good as a coach that we think he is, he should be able to cook with Sam Howell. Because the offensive personnel that Sam Howell has around him from a skill position standpoint is way too good for him to come out and be terrible under EB. Now, EB's offense is probably going to have a lot of motion, a lot of deception, which is something that's going to be needed. I don't really know what their scheme is going to be when it comes to running the ball. Some people believe that it's going to be some more wide zone, but we don't really know how this offense is going to look until the season kicks off in September. But I do know that this offense, for a fact, should be way better this season than what it was under Scott Turner. Now, this defense was a top 10 unit last year under Ron Rivera and defensive coordinator Jack Del Rio. They had the best third down defense in the NFL. They were 8th in points per game allowed. They were 3rd in yards per game allowed. They currently have one of the NFL's best defensive lines. Montez Sweat, Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen, and you got Chase Young, who should be coming back at 100%. And Chase Young, if I had to bet on people to win Comeback Player of the Year, if I had to bet on a defensive player to win the award, without a doubt would be him. And then you drafted cornerback Emmanuel Forbes, which was a little bit of a reach. I'm not going to lie to you guys, but this dude is pretty good. He's just the Devontae Smith of cornerbacks. But I think that Emmanuel Forbes, he should work out if he can get a little bit of meat on his bones. I don't think anybody wants their starting cornerback going into his first game weighing 166 pounds. So hopefully he can get to 170, 175, and that would be okay with me. But overall, defensively, this is a really good unit. So all you really need is for the offense to be above average, which I don't think it's asking too much when you got Eric Bieniemy. This guy is supposed to be a football genius. He's supposed to be one of the best play callers in the game, right? It's just that he hasn't really had the opportunity to prove that because during his time in Kansas City, he was kind of getting outshined by Big Red and Patrick Mahomes. So it's hard for people to know how good you are if you're in an already well-made situation. So Eric Bieniemy, not only is he going into this season with something to prove, but this is somebody who's trying to audition for a head coaching job. So I expect this dude to be going all out to make sure that this offense produces at a high level. And I believe that it will. And when you look at this division right now, we know Philadelphia, they're going to be up there. They're probably going to be the favorite to win this division. But then after that, you got the Dallas Cowboys and the New York Giants. I think Washington, from a talent standpoint, is just as talented as the Dallas Cowboys. And I definitely believe that they're way more talented than the New York Giants. And New York Giants, there's a strong possibility that they don't even make it to the playoffs this year. They have one of the toughest schedules in the NFL this upcoming season. For Washington, their schedule isn't as tough. And last year, this team went 8-1. Ron Rivera isn't the kind of coach that is going to be bad enough to have you picking in the top 5 part of the draft. And Ron Rivera, his floor probably is maybe 6 wins. If you want to say 5, okay, but I don't think this team is bad enough for them to win 5 games if everything goes left. If everything goes left, I think this is a 6-win team. This team won 8 games last year with 3 different quarterbacks. If Sam Howell can prove to be as good as what many Commanders fans hope he will be, there's no reason why the Commanders shouldn't make it to the postseason. This defense is going to be fantastic. The offense just has to be better than what it was last season. And there's no reason why I shouldn't when you have Eric Bieniemy calling the plays. Brian Robinson, I love this guy a lot. Brian Robinson was doing some huge work for me in the flex last year on my fantasy football team. And I'm a huge fan of him when he was coming out of Alabama. Plus, he got shot, which that I was like, damn, brother got shot. I hope bro pulled through. And then when he pulled through, I was like, okay, how's this going to affect his rookie season? Well, He played pretty well behind the offensive line that was not that great. You got Antonio Gibson, who is more of a Swiss Army knife. Logan Thomas, who he's solid. I like Logan Thomas, former Virginia Tech quarterback. How many of you guys remember Logan Thomas when he was playing QB for VT? But overall, I think that the Washington Commanders, this is a team that shouldn't be overlooked. This is a team that has a lot of talent on both sides of the football. When it comes to the offensive side of the ball, your main concern really is the offensive line. I don't have any doubts about Sam Howell. To keep it a stack with you, I trust Eric Bieniemy. I believe that Eric Bieniemy is going to be able to get Sam Howell playing at a good level. And I like what I saw out of Sam Howell in his start against the Dallas Cowboys. It wasn't perfect, but he definitely showed a lot of promise. Now, I know that promise doesn't get you far in the NFL. The NFL is a result-driven league. You have to go out there. You have to execute. You have to produce. But I think with Eric Bieniemy, with the creativity that he's shown in the past during his time at Kansas City, I think that that's going to be able to help Sam Howell become an effective quarterback. You're going to have creative play calling. You're going to have a lot of motion. So you're going to give him some easy completions at times to kind of get him into rhythm. And then you're going to find a way to start dialing things up a notch later throughout the season. And Eric Bieniemy, even though we don't really know how much he was responsible for when it came to the success that Kansas City had on offense, there have been a lot of moments where Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes had credited a lot of the success to Eric Bieniemy at times. So it's not like Eric Bieniemy was just sitting there in Kansas City and he didn't do anything. Sometimes he would call plays. Sometimes Andy Reid would call plays. It just was a little confusing at times. But they decided to let Eric Bieniemy walk away. Still a little bit weird that they would let him walk away if he's such a great football coach. Like, I don't really know too many organizations that just let great football coaches walk out for no good reason. So maybe, there were some things that went on behind the scenes, or maybe Kansas City truly just wants for Eric Bieniemy to spread his wings. But Eric Bieniemy is a large reason why I'm high on the Washington Commanders. And I think that Ron Rivera is a okay coach. I think with him having a really good offensive mind in Eric Bieniemy, this offense should improve, and that should complement the defense. And think about it this way. This defense possibly could have been even better if the offense was better. Anytime you have an offense that isn't great, that has a tendency to stall, can't sustain drives, it puts your defense back on the field for more plays than what they should be. When you have an offense that can actually sustain drives and take time off the clock, it helps out your defense because then they get a little bit more rest on the sideline. But I don't think that anybody should take the Washington Commanders lightly this upcoming season. But you guys let me know how you guys feel about the Washington Commanders. I appreciate you guys for listening to this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Rate us 5 stars. We are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, all podcasting platforms. Every single episode that's uploaded on the YouTube channel is available in audio format on all podcasting platforms. I appreciate you guys for listening to this episode of the podcast, and I will see you guys shortly.